Hello, welcome to another episode. So today we are exploring some differences when it comes to the working culture between Italy and the UK, because in my personal experience, having worked here in Italy for 4 years now, I can tell you that there are some vast differences in terms of the culture between the UK and Italy, and we're going to explore those today. So let's get into it, shall we? So the first difference, I would say, between Italy and the UK when it comes to working culture is when we are talking about contracts. Now, contracts here in Italy are a little bit more complicated, shall we say. So, typically, a person here in Italy, an employee, is issued with a determinato work contract, which basically means it's fixed term. It's very rare for an Italian to be immediately issued with what is known as an indeterminato work contract, which means it is permanent. Whereas in the UK, it's the complete reverse. You are typically issued with a permanent work contract for every job that you apply for, unless the job is specifically for a short-term period. That would be the only time that you would typically be issued with a temporary or fixed contract, is if it were that type of work. The majority of jobs in the UK, you are issued with a permanent work contract, and the only way that would be cancelled is if you were fired or you decided to quit. So that's the first glaring difference, because if you decide to move to Italy and you expect to get a contract that is exactly like what you're used to in your country, this can come as a bit of a surprise. My first job here in Italy was teaching at a Montessori school in Naples, and I was issued with a fixed term contract for my first year, which basically lasted for the duration of the first school year. In my second year, I was actually really fortunate because I got issued with the gold dust of contracts here in Italy, the indeterminato, which I knew a lot of other teachers who had been at that school who were Italian, I would like to mention, had waited a lot longer to receive. So I can tell you that it's not a normal thing here in Italy to immediately receive an indeterminato work contract. So bear that in mind when you move here. But having said that, a fixed term contract does enable you to set up your life here. If you're thinking of moving to Italy, I was able to do everything I needed to do to secure myself here in Italy when I first received that fixed term determinato contract. So don't let that be a deterrent if you're worried about being able to sort your life out here. Now, some other differences, specifically when it comes to work contracts, are the fact that you do need to brace yourself. Not everything in your contract may necessarily be kosher. Some places may, tweak the hours you work or the pay that you receive, just because this is how Italy works. So bear that in mind. That's something very important to consider, particularly if you need your documents to be completely accurate, if you're dependent on your income for, finance in the future or something similar. Your contract may not necessarily represent what you take every single month. Another difference is that maybe your pay date may not be fixed every month. This really depends on your employer, I would say, because I do know some other people who work here in Italy and have work contracts and they're paid on the same day every single month without fail. However, sometimes you may be paid a little bit before or a little bit after, which, if this is your main source of pay here in Italy, can be a little bit unsettling, because if you have commitments and things to pay for, generally speaking, you have to bear in mind it might be a few days early or a few days late, not always on time. Now, if you decide to change jobs here in Italy and you have an indeterminato work contract, something very unusual happens here. You have to get it closed down properly, usually with a lawyer or somebody similar to close the contract down, but you are given an end of contract payment, which is something that I didn't even know existed. It definitely doesn't exist in the UK. The only time you get a payment in the UK is if the company closes and you are made redundant. You are normally given a payment depending on the length of service and time that you have spent at the company. But it's not normal that if you decide to quit a job and move somewhere else that you are given any form of payment to do that. You are only paid for what you've worked. Whereas here in Italy, you are given an end of contract payment, which reflects sort of your service, how long you spent with the company. And in many cases, if you've spent a long time with the company, this could easily be a few thousand euros. So definitely something that doesn't exist in the UK. So I would say that that's an advantage. Although closing contracts here in Italy is very complicated. It's not dealt with by the companies. It's all dealt through centrally through INPS, and you have to get a lawyer, and it's all very like complicated in that sense. Usually it's the lawyer for your company or accountant or someone similar that would deal with the closure of the contract for you, but it's not an easy process. It's certainly not a case of quitting your job and immediately being able to start working at another company. You have to close your first contract down before you can open a second one. So it's definitely a little bit more complicated in that respect. Now, another thing to consider is that if you have a work contract here in Italy and it's indeterminato, you are given extra payments. So these are generally issued in August and in December, and they are the equivalent of 1 month's full pay. So if you consider that basically you get 2 extra payments, if you like, twice a year, it's pretty amazing, because this definitely doesn't happen in the UK. And also in August, Italians will have their holiday. It's pretty much like a national holiday that's given to Italians in that time for Ferragosto. And normally some companies will pay 2 weeks holiday pay to their staff to have that period off. Some companies 3 weeks, it all depends. But that's like a set fixed holiday period every single year that every Italian gets. So there are many differences, but actually some benefits, I think, sometimes, but it's very much dependent on the company you work for and the type of contract that you have. If you have a fixed term contract, you don't benefit from extra payments in August and December, for example. So it really does depend on the type of contract you have as to the benefits that you may receive. There are definitely many different benefits here in Italy, and even, for example, if you get married, you are paid for your honeymoon as well, which just doesn't happen in the UK at all unless you have a very, very good boss. So yes, there are some significant differences when it comes to contracts and the benefits that employees can receive here in Italy. So let's talk about the second big cultural difference, is the mindset around work. Now, this is where I think the Italians don't fare as well as the Brits, and I'll explain why before everybody bites my head off. So in the UK, I feel that we are bolder. We're not afraid to ask for more. We know our rights. We know what we will and we won't tolerate and accept in the workplace. There are like employees' rights. There are so many different things to protect employees in the UK that I feel it's more difficult to be taken advantage of. It's not to say it doesn't happen, of course it does, but it's a lot more difficult to be taken advantage of, I would suggest, than it is here in Italy. Because here in Italy, especially here in the south of Italy where I live, of course, different parts of Italy, it may differ, particularly in the north, which I understand is perhaps more similar to how life is in the UK, for example. But here where I am in the south, there's definitely more of a mindset of just being grateful to have what you have and stop. And so what you find is that people here will take whatever they can take at whatever rate of pay they can manage, and they are just grateful to work, and that's it. And there is a bit of a problem with that mindset, and we're going to talk about it in the next reason, because it's often detrimental to their progression and to the opportunities that can be there for them, because people can take advantage of this. So I think the mindset around work is very, very different. Like, people here are afraid to talk about pay and afraid to, you know, ask about their money or when they're going to get paid or anything like this. And this just wouldn't happen in the UK. For one, you'd never be guessing when you get paid. You're always paid on the same day every month or the same day of the week, depending on your job. But secondly, people are not afraid to ask about their money. Like, it's a given right. You work, you get paid. Like, you know, it's that kind of relationship and that kind of mindset. And whilst I like the gratitude that Italians show towards their work, I do think it can actually be detrimental to their progression and their growth, really. And the third reason why explains just this. And that is because employers can often take advantage of their employees. If you have an employee who is desperate for work, will take whatever you can pay them, doesn't mind working extra hours for nothing, you know, like will literally put up with the crummiest of conditions, the employer will absolutely love that and not necessarily give a monkeys about that employee's rights and mindset. And this is very different to the UK, because I feel in the UK employees have more rights and protection, and we have tribunals and we have places that people can go to if they feel that they're being mistreated at work or treated unfairly or discriminated against. But I kind of feel, especially here in the south of Italy, I don't feel that there is that much protection for employees, particularly in those situations. And what you may find is that, like, for example, working conditions are not the same. Like, you may find that you are expected to work longer hours, sometimes without a break. You may find that you are given very short notice about like changes to your work and you have to accept it and not say anything. Pay rises, they're not a normal thing here in Italy, and I think as well, like, employers don't know how to react when an employee asks for a pay rise, particularly here in the south. And I think as a result, they don't handle it in the best way. They're not so direct. They keep fobbing you off, hoping that you change your mind and not ask anymore. Like, it definitely isn't the environment for progression, that's for sure. And also there seems to be a lack of boundaries when it comes to like your time. And in terms of like your availability and in terms of what you're expected to do. Definitely feels very, very different to the UK. I feel in the UK we have a more clear boundary in terms of what the employer can expect from you and what you can expect to bring to the employer. And I feel that employers are more nervous, shall we say, about crossing that line, because there can be serious ramifications and implications for a company if they're deemed to be discriminating or mistreating their staff. So I feel like there's a little bit more of a balance in the UK. Not for every company, of course, there will always be exceptions, but generally speaking, there is a little bit more of a balance, a bit more of a line and a boundary that exists in the UK compared here to Italy. I think it's really important to know this, because if you come from a country where your rights are very clear, where you've always been understood, where, you know, there is that sense of responsibility for the employer and responsibility for the employee, it can be very difficult to start working in a country where those boundaries don't exist, and where, you know, you may be refused to do things that actually would never ever happen in the UK. Like, totally different. So just really important for you to know this. And the fourth difference when we're talking about working culture is when it comes to self-employment. Now, in the UK, it is possible to be both self-employed and employed at the same time. Obviously, there's different procedures for filing your taxes, but I was employed at one time and self-employed before I made the transition to being fully self-employed. So I can tell you firsthand, it happens and it is possible. Whereas here in Italy, it's not possible for you to open what is known as a partitiva, which is what is the self-employment route here in Italy, and also be in possession of a work contract. It's either or. So this is the first big difference. You have to either fully commit to working on a freelance basis or self-employed, or you have to remain with a work contract. You cannot have both. The second difference is that it's really important that if you are thinking of opening a partitiva here in Italy, you get the right tax advice. The tax situation here in Italy varies considerably to many other countries, and believe it or not, there are actually some reductions that you can benefit from depending on your profession and on how much you earn every year. So it's definitely worth getting some good tax advice and look around, particularly if you come here and English is your predominant language. Be very careful about immediately going with accountancy firms that specialise in helping foreigners with English, because often you will pay a hefty fee and not realise it. Try to speak to fellow expats, try to speak with people that have been in a similar situation to understand the going rate, the cost of things, and also exactly what you have to do. Because unfortunately, it's a business, of course, to help foreigners moving here to Italy with their taxes, but it isn't always the most cost-effective option for you, and often you will pay a premium for that privilege. So it's just really important that you do your homework a little bit, because honestly, even with my like very basic Italian, I have been able to understand my tax obligations here in Italy, and it's important that you can do the same thing and not be ripped off for the privilege of doing so. And the difference I would suggest, all to do with self-employment, is that I feel in the UK there is more support and encouragement to start your own business compared with Italy. In the UK, there are like government bodies that work at building small businesses and offering support and advice and guidance and websites, and there's just a real encouragement to start your own business in the UK. Like, it's considered to be good for the economy, and like, you know, there's just a real drive to get people to start their own business and to support those that are in business. And I feel that that doesn't really exist here in Italy. All I keep hearing from people is how complicated it is to open a business here, the bureaucracy, the paperwork, the taxes. You always will hear people talking about the taxes when you're self-employed. But it doesn't seem to have the same like support structure. I don't feel that there is as much encouragement to start a business here, particularly here in the south. And I just feel that a lot people are more deterred than encouraged. So that's a big difference right there. So let's move on to the fifth and final difference for this video when it comes to working culture between Italy and the UK, and that boils down to the rate of pay. Now in Italy there isn't a minimum wage, which means employers can pay you whatever they want to pay you per hour, and often depending on the employer, you may find yourself in a situation where you're not getting paid very much at all, really. Whereas in the UK, we have what is known as the minimum wage, and as of April this year, it is going to be increased to £9.50 per hour, which is the equivalent of around €11 per hour. Now, before you get your knickers in a twist and think, oh my goodness, that's amazing, do consider that life in the UK is a lot more expensive than in Italy. So that is needed, and that is why I do have a minimum wage, because people have to be able to pay their bills and afford to live and have a home. So, you know, it is different in the UK, but of course you pay more for what you need in the UK as well. But yes, here in Italy, I think that's a bit of a problem, because employers may not want to be so generous, particularly in the south and in more remote places, and as a result people have to get by on peanuts basically, which is why in the south I believe the cost of living is so much lower, because it's a reflection of what people here actually earn. So it's definitely something to consider. In the north, it's considered that maybe you might earn more, but again, all region dependent. And again, in Milan, it's, as an example, it's typically more expensive than it is here in the south. So lots to consider. I hope this video has helped you a little bit. I will be recording some more videos about working here in Italy, because I know it's a subject that a lot of you have questions about. But in the meantime, if you're curious to know what it's like to teach English here in Italy, which is exactly what I do, then watch this video right here, and this will tell you exactly what it's like. And I will see you in the next video. Ciao for now.